This is the day in our hymnal. It's actually number 657. It's a fairly simple song, so get a chance to kind of hear it, learn it. You can share it maybe as you walk through different days. You can sing it along for yourself. This is the day that the Lord hath made, that the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it, and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord hath made. Let us join in our call to worship. Give thanks to Creator God and call upon His great name. Make known Creator's powerful deeds among the people. Remember Creator's wonderful works from ages past. Remember and have faith for 1,000 generations. Today I want to open with the Cheyenne song, S.N.A. Honey Jesus, is in Singing the Sacred. Actually, finally, it's song 12 on page 33, but not many have the book. But I'll sing through it once in Cheyenne and then in English. S.N.A. Honey Jesus, S.N.A. Honey Jesus, nay no money, nay no money, nay mo henny, nay mo henny, Jesus nay no money na say. Jesus our friend and brother, Jesus our friend and brother, He invites us, come together, Jesus calls us together, come now. Let us share your prayer of praise and honor you. Your face, O Creator, we seek as we call on your name. You hear us when we ask for your help, and you grant us grace that we might be filled with courage and joy. We are your people and partners of your promises. Fill us now with your Spirit that we may stand strong and have the faith that you do not forget those who call to you. Form us in your image once more, and make this world according to your will and intention. Amen.
Amen.
Today we're going to again turn to the 13th chapter in Matthew. But we're going to read in a series, one from 31 to 33, then 44 to 52. Again, a section out of some of the parables of Jesus here in this chapter of Matthew. But today we'll be hearing several parables. In fact, really, in a sense, 5 short, pithy, small parables, followed by what I call, in a sense, a proverb, if you will, from him, a short little sense of wisdom. So we hear then these parables. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hid in a field, which someone found and hid. then in his joy goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught fish of every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down, and put the good into baskets, but threw out the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous, and throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all this? They answered, yes. So he said to them, therefore, every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household, who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. When Jesus had finished these parables, he left that place. You would be blessed with wisdom and understanding these words. And today I call this small yet not insignificant, or if you will, small yet significant. Because I think we sometimes hear about things like, well, good things come in small packages. But yet, the truth is we often like things to be large or significant. But I want us to think about today in the sense of looking at ourselves, looking at our own lives, and really, in a sense, giving ourselves, if you will, a little more credit than we sometimes do. We sometimes think, well, those people in those big offices or with big names or lots of resources, they're significant. But yet, quite often, the small actions that we do are of great significance. And marketing would tell us that for every one person touched, there are at least 9 more. Well, if you extrapolate that then into more, for every one that they touch, there's 9 more. It doesn't just become 9 and 9. It suddenly becomes this great, great number. And so I think for every great action, every good deed, everything that we do seeking the good, we need to, in a sense, consider of much more significance. The reason I bring that up, of course, is we have in the first parable, Jesus talking about the mustard seed, and how it grows then into a great shrub and then into a tree. And a lot of folks wanted to discuss that, argue about it, talk about it in botanical terms, but then, of course, I think we get distracted. Because then we begin to argue, in a sense, sometimes about trees that didn't even exist at the location that he's talking about. And he's in a context and he's trying to share with people what they would grasp and understand. I've heard more than one who would get into, well, there are orchid seeds that are the smallest of all. And when you get to the greatest of shrubs or the greatest then of trees, and one sometimes compare the sequoias here, in a sense, in California. But those were not the comparisons he was trying to help them gain wisdom with. I think it's pretty easy if we really just allow the parable to speak, to understand what he's trying to say to us in the sense that something that starts so small, what we might consider insignificant, could then be planted. Besides, used the way that the mustard tree in that region can be used, not only by our relatives, the many 4-legged relatives, but our 2-legged relatives who were quite creative at using those things and gaining that flavor that they would call mustard. It's not necessarily what's used, what we call prepared mustard. But he shared with them this tiny, tiny seed. Even within the fruits of that tree, there's only one seed. And it takes a while for that one to sometimes even grow out of that fruit. And yet, so what we might call insignificant that it would be unknown. No one would notice it. It would just be unnoticed. And yet grows into a shrub, into a tree that is not only some might consider insignificant is quite significant in the world. And so I want us to take time at times for ourselves. When we begin to feel either insignificant or unnoticed, to begin to realize that through the grace of God, what we are and what we do is quite significant and has great impact. And so with all of us seeking, if we will, to do the good, the best that we can, and consider that impact. It's not just one of us, but it's all kinds of us. It's, if you will, millions and millions of little tiny seeds. And so that's what I think he then moves on to then another quick parable of the woman adding some yeast into the flour. I can't claim to be great knowledge when it comes to baking or cooking or all that goes with that. But I do remember baking lots and lots of bread with my grandmother. And she would often make bread for family, but when she was making bread, we were rather impatient to try and get to the bread. All this work to get to that bread. But in trying to help her, would often realize that it would only take a small amount of yeast, added to lots and lots of flour, it became lots and lots of dough. Sometimes even the dough itself, I was like, I think, wow, how's that going to feed everybody that she's planning to feed? Until we let it sit and let it rise and gave it time. And then, of course, even as a young boy, we realize, wow, something starting off very small can become something very significant. And of course, Grandma did not waste the opportunity to let us know. So you guys know that every little thing that you do, all the good that you can do, can become something quite large and significant. She took that opportunity to pass on, if you will, that wisdom to us. So how do these two that are, in a sense, talking about something so small that can become so great, connect to then these next parables where one, he has someone who finds something hidden in a field. The one searching for the value of a pearl that maybe is hidden amongst all the other pearls. Or those who are casting it out in nets and then bringing it up with lots of fish. I think one of the potential connections to these next three parables are that they're all searching, if you will, or they all discover something that's hidden. And I think at times when we maybe feel unnoticed or insignificant, we feel hidden. But he's sharing within these parables that which is hidden is of great value, because all of these have a value orientation to them. And though the one who finds this treasure, of course, I find this very interesting parables. He hides it. He doesn't really run off and share it. But he's really trying to give them a sense of this person's value. And it's a parable, of course. It's based on teaching and passing on some wisdom. It's not necessarily about he's trying to share, well, John did this. But the value, of course, is so significant to this person that they run off, sell everything, buy this field, in a sense, because now they feel that this is of such value, they invest their all. And we have the same thing from the merchant. When he finds that great pearl, he's so willing to invest everything in it. Goes off and read here, sells everything and invests in this one pearl. Some might come back with other proverbs and other things and say, wow, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't put everything in one thing. But what he's trying to share with us is this sense of value these two have. And they're willing to give their all for what they value. So I wonder, as I think through these two parables, what am I willing to invest in what I consider of value? Not necessarily what the world considers of value. Or at times when even our religion becomes so tied to nationalist or political ends that that is what becomes of value. And the two get so tied up and mixed together that you can't tell one from the other, that I think we then become in danger that we begin to value what is not necessarily of his teachings and wisdom. And so what I have to look at in here is, do I value even the small good things that the Creator enables me to do? Do I value those enough that I am willing to invest in them? Some could say even at our good neighbor pantry here, that when we're serving 100 families or 200, or maybe even our upper end of 250, doesn't compare to someone else who comes and says, well, we had 1,000 drive-through. But yet each and every one of those single family units, even if they're one person who receives food, is of value to Creator. And so are we willing to invest, even if it's just one? And so for me, I think these parables speak of that which, what am I willing to invest in when God is willing to invest in each and every single one of us? So that we realize we are not only significant, we are recipients of God's grace. We are of great value. And so we can invest and share that value on as well. So then how do these kind of compare to the fishing net? Well, for me, I see that net being tossed into, when you toss the net into, whether it's a lake, in the ocean, wherever it might be, the net in a sense kind of disappears. And you don't know what you're going to bring up. It's going to be a great surprise. And one thing about net fishing, which again I'm not an expert at, I've spent much of my time as a child with my father, my parents, and relatives. When we went fishing, it was usually pole fishing. And even at a point when one uncle gave us some cane poles with just some line on them and said, go find some, bait or something along the way as you get to the pond. And I think I realized that it really was a ploy to just get us out of the house and keep us busy. Because I didn't learn till later he was actually telling my parents, well, there's nothing left in that pond anyway, so they'll just spend all day out there and have some fun outside. But they didn't quite know what to do when I, of course, came back and said, well, I caught a fish. What do you mean? I caught a fish and it's this big. What do you mean it's this big? I said, it's this big. I think they didn't think I was telling the truth, but that I was so valuing that I actually caught something that they would question it until I finally said, it's this big and it's staying this big. And of course they had to come out and realize that yes, it was a nearly 9-pound fish. Then comes my brother soon after that with a 5-pound. And we ended up, of course, giving thanks for this gift, for this life which brings us life, and sharing it with all kinds of the family. But the surprise, of course, in this kind of fishing is you bring up the net, much like we did when we went even with those poles into that pond. We had no idea we'd get anything or what it would be. And so the surprise, of course, comes up, and then we look at it, and of course some are valued, and we said that these are good, and he describes the separating or the sifting out, of course, like we had with the parable of the weeds and the wheat, that there is good, there is evil even amongst the good. And at some point it will be sifted out. But for now, maybe we could even take it as a sense of what we value when we're faced often with daily surprises. What will we value in the midst of those? What will we consider good? What will we look at? Well, it reminds me in a sense of the early Methodist movement and Wesley's bull. Many times these parables are really looked at, and even especially when Jesus, in the kind of proverbial senses, you understand this? They say yes. It says good. And every scribe who has been trained, and And then people use this to say, well, we have to be trained, educated, right, and so that we get the knowledge right, we get the information right. I think they miss the wisdom that he's passing on. They really question, in a sense, what we value. And even the householder in that is a matter of values. He says he brings out of his treasure that which he values, that is both old and new. So does he question within there that we only value what is old, or do we only value what's brand new? Rather, recognizing there may be value in both. Maybe it's even a shot that Jesus was taking at some of his critics of the day who did not care for him, basically saying, in a sense, well, look how young he is. Another thing, well, he's not Moses, he's not from the past. We only want to look at those 5 books that come from him. He's telling us something new. That's not, we don't want to hear, and we don't want to hear sometimes what is maybe a new movement of God. And yet, even in the book of Acts, kind of a diversion a little bit here, if you will. One of my favorite characters, Gamaliel, warns his colleagues, be careful. Because what you do not value because it seems new and different to you. If it is a new movement of God, you do not want to be found opposing God. So he just tells them, just leave it alone and let it develop. Kind of like maybe that mustard seed. Just leave it alone and let us see what it grows into. And like some of the other parables, we might find ourselves receiving something of value and a great surprise. Well, that's why, as I was beginning to say, the early movement under Wesley was really not about judging one another in any kind of negative way. It was not about, well, that's not significant, well, that wasn't good enough, that doesn't measure up. It really was simply about everyone gathering together and checking in every week. And they checked in on those 3 simple rules of doing no harm, of doing good, attending on the ordinances of God. Today, kind of a modern movement of the early system really has a series of clauses that the people write themselves. And they're really based around simply a balance of doing works of compassion and justice, worship, devotion, and receiving the guidance of the Spirit. And folks would get together each week and check in on those. And they're not about really saying, well, hey, you didn't measure up on prayer this week. No, it's allowing that person to simply check in about themselves. Well, this week, I really struggled whether maybe it would be in prayer. This week, I came across someone who was in need, and I gave them something to drink. And I think in that checking in, we begin to realize what maybe we didn't give a lot of value to, considering it insignificant, we begin to realize is significant. We begin to realize that we are seeking the little seeds that maybe we feel we have to grow in love. And allow love to grow us to where every little seed, every little thing that we do becomes of great value and significance. Because those are the things that are of the grace of God which change the world for the better. So we have to, in that sense, as we check in. And Wesley did it for himself. Every single night. It might feel a bit obsessive, but every night he would ask himself, how did I do today? He even had things like, did I get angry with my brother? He was really referring to his brother Charles. Why? Because if I did, then tomorrow I'll plant a different seed and I will start new. It wasn't about putting himself down. It wasn't about people getting together and putting each other down either. It was building one another up and allowing those seeds to grow so that they become significant. He would ask himself things like, did I receive anything today that I did not immediately give thanks for? Not only to that person, but to God. And what he realized was when folks got together and checked in on those little seeds, they grew personally, spiritually, and corporately. And that was their movement. And Whether we gather together, have a weekly check-in, or we even do that with ourselves, especially in these days of physical distance. If we do that for ourselves, and in a sense, do it with that same sense that they did, where they watch over one another in love. They encouraged each other. The only time they ever commented was to build somebody up. They were not there to say, oh, well, don't come back next week if you're not doing enough good. That's the way we tend to judge ourselves. As though God looks at us and says, I'll let you into the kingdom if you have more good than bad. It's putting everything on a scale and finding out what's significant and what is not. Instead, the grace of God looks at us and says, that was good. Let's work, let's grow that and grow the good in love. In a sense, that's maybe why out of that early Methodist movement came AA. And it has its own particulars, its own branch, its own movement, but in a sense, that's how it came out of that. One example it made me think of was one young man who came to me one time, and he was looking at things, if you will, I think, towards a negative judgment. And the other people were encouraging him. He just felt he needed to do better. He wanted to not have his life occupied by alcohol. And he was not giving himself any credit. And he said, I went to a meeting, and a guy had been there, and he got up and shared how he had been sober for 6 years. Great. He said, I went to another meeting, and you know, the same guy got up and said, I've been sober for 7 days. Oh, see, he's a hypocrite. He fell off like a... And I said, but what he was telling you was, even though he, quote, what we call fell down, fell off the wagon, whatever words we want to use, make a negative judgment for it. What he really is saying in that positive sense, I got up, I planted a new seed, and I now have a whole new life again. And that's how it works for all of us. We are all, if you will, recovering sinners. Whenever we fail, though, do we look at ourselves and say, well, it's no longer in. Instead, let's get up. Start new, start fresh. Start with the seeds that go small and become large, and give ourselves enough value, the same value that God gives to us, and continue on. Growing in love, because that's what God looks at. So that's why that early movement was really about checking in a positive way. This week, I struggled with having time for prayer, but the more I thought about it, I began to make time and find a new time for my prayers. Great. Walked across someone. Why? Because I was trying to now live in a way that I'm listening to the Spirit's guidance. As one friend of mine shared one time, he walked past a man who he saw quite often by where he worked. The man said to him, hey, can I have something to drink? Oh, sorry, I'll be back later. I'm busy. I got to get to a meeting. I got to get somewhere. So then he walked on and began to hear the Spirit, if you will, talking to him, saying that was the wrong answer. Well, he could have just felt bad, put himself down, sorry, this, I said, no, said, and stopped, turned around, and went and bought the man 2 Gatorades. Brought him back, passed him on. Now, did that change the world? Some would say no, but yes, it did. It let that man know today you're significant enough that I stop in my hurriedness, I'm back, and I'm giving you a bit of God's grace. Now, how that will be received and what he'll do with it, I don't know. But the little seeds, the little things, I think the combination of all these parables is that if we value them enough, they become great, significant acts of grace. A combination of and it spread. So in our world today, where there seems to often be so much negativity, the way we look at, judge one another, the way we look at things, what if we took those small seeds of goodness and grace and grew them in love? Now, I know at times it might take some work, putting all that yeast and putting together all that dough. It takes work. There are times that, yes, some things need to get fixed. And to really work on those mustard seeds, those particular ones in that area, you have to soak out. If you want to get them quickly, you got to soak out that fruit. You got to get that one little tiny seed sifted out from all of that pulp and all that everything else might want to have and to eat. To get to that one seed, it'll take some real work. But when you get to that, what now seems, wow, that's kind of insignificant, you're going to be growing a significant tree. And providing shelter, and food, and gifts. So I just want us to kind of think about today that when we begin to feel either hidden, unnoticed, or insignificant, I want you to feel the significance that Creator God gives to you, that Creator God values and pays attention to. I want you to consider yourself significant and of value. And in that, grow in grace and love. And that will make a great difference in this world and the life to come. Amen?
Amen.
Today with that, I wanted to sing the song When Love Is Found. The hymnal is actually number 643. I'm going to change the words a little bit today to kind of fit more all of us. It's really a song that's in the back of the hymnal in the area for marriage. And so, of course, the words are really more about a couple, two people, but I just want to expand it out a little bit today. So I'm going to sing verses 1, 2, 4, and 5, and I'll just make some slight changes. When love is found and hope comes home, sing and be glad that all are one. When love explodes and fills the sky, praise God and share our Maker's joy. When love has flowered in trust and care, build up each day that love may dare to reach beyond home's warmth and light, to serve and strive for truth and right. When love is torn and trust betrayed, great strength to love till torments fade, till love keeps us with no score of wrong, but here through pain, love's Easter song. Praise God for love, praise God for life, in age or youth, in all of life. Lift up your hearts, let love be fed through death and life in broken bread. So go then enjoy